Hey everybody, it's Gigathin. This is going to be a bit different from my usual content, but I just had to get this information out there. So I was watching the new Xenoblade 3 trailer, and the Ouroboros transformations got me thinking about how they could be tied into past games. I have a theory as to what they could mean and how the story of the new game might play out. And yes, I didn't think it needed to be said, but this video will have spoilers for Xenoblade 1 and 2. So to get the first thing out of the way, I'm almost certain that the forms are some kind of blade resonance. We know from Noah's line of dialogue here
I've never used this kind of blade before.
that he's a driver. This kind of blade could be referring to flesh eaters, or maybe it's just their specific weapon types that he isn't used to. As for the transformations themselves, I think Noah is resonating with Mio, Lons is resonating with Sina, and Taion is resonating with Uni. That last one may seem like a bit of a stretch, but I'll point you to this video by Xenobits. He observes in that video that there haven't been any shots showing Taion without a scarf on his neck or a shirt covering his chest, so it's possibly a secret reveal later on that he's a blade eater or some kind of blade. It would also explain why Noah is shown using Taion's origami attacks here, because flesh eaters and blade eaters can resonate without the need to commit to any one driver or blade like normal blades do. Moving on to the real meat and potatoes, I think the transformations are meant to tie into the Trinity processor. Noah and Mio's form looks a lot to me like the Bionis, especially with the horn on its head and the wings. The resemblance is even closer if you look at the early sculpture made by the developers. This resemblance to the Bionis is meant to represent Ontos. Uni and Taion's form bears a striking resemblance to Numa. It also looks like it has a bit of the gargoyles and sirens designs mixed in there. I really like it. Lons and Sina's form is a bit harder to say, but it's pretty bulky. And you know, Malos was a pretty bulky guy. Aion could also be a potential influence, which Logos piloted. A lot of people have also pointed out online that it bears a resemblance to a Malthus. I personally don't see it, but that's another potential connection. I think this relationship to the Trinity processor is going to be a huge reveal later in the games. Adding on to this, in Xenoblade 2, Rex and Numa share their life force through a special type of blade resonance. In Xenoblade Chronicles 1, while in memory space, Ontos revives Shulk, acting as his life force, similar to Numa and Rex. The trailers have repeatedly mentioned clocks, which a lot of people have been theorizing to be some kind of life force. See where I'm going? I think the clocks are being somehow tied to the Trinity Cores and we'll meet them later on. But you may be asking, how could Logos return if Rex and Numa destroyed his core? Well, at the end of Xenoblade 2, we see Numa duplicate her own core crystal and give one to Rex. Since the cores contain all data, this is possible for an Aegis. The conduit disappeared from Allrest and severed its connection to Numa at the end of Xenoblade 2. This presumably also happened to Shulk's world at the end of Xenoblade 1, since both worlds are now fused. We have no clue what happened to Alvis though. He left along with the conduit after Shulk made his wish. He seems to be much more powerful than the other two cores, so it's possible he could reappear upon sensing Numa, and use himself as a channel to restore Numa's powers. It's also possible that Ontos still has all of his abilities. Since he, as an Aegis, would also contain data of all blades, it should be possible for him to reconstruct Logos' core crystal, and hopefully awaken it into a less violent state. It's also possible that since the conduit is gone from the world, the Aegises are not at their full power, so maybe the protagonists need to fill their clocks with energy to keep the Aegis' power running like a battery. I admittedly have no clue why the Aegises would be doing all of this in the first place, but I'd say the hints are all there. It's also entirely possible that these resemblances and clues are just references that I'm overanalyzing. But considering that this is Monolith Soft, and this is also the game that ties everything together, I find it more than unlikely that it's nothing. Anyway, I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree down in the comments. And even if I'm wrong, I guess we'll find out what's really going on in July. Oh, one more thing before the video ends. I'm so glad the Mechon are back. There's nothing wrong with the Xenoblade 2 mechs, but the cybernetic aesthetic is so commonplace in anime. I love how these things have gears, but also giant glowing ether engines like some kind of nightmarish fusion between steampunk and mecha. I also like how intimidating Metal Face is with his giant skeleton theme, but it's not done to the point where he's overdoing it. Easily one of my favorite mech designs just because of how unnerving it is. The new trailer shows the party fighting the Keves Mechon, which is kinda disappointing since we already know because of that we won't get to pilot any faced Mechon, but I'm just glad that they're back. Hey, thanks for listening to my deranged ramblings for 5 minutes. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to let me know that you enjoyed. I usually make video essays and philosophy-related content on this channel, but if you'd like to see more just general theories and lore type of content, especially for Xenoblade, be sure to let me know in the comments, cause I'm more than willing to make it. Catch you in the next one.